Good morning. It's February the 6th, 2026. It's about 11:42 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, Old, New, and Third Testament. Today we're going to cover democratic racism, the ties to Democrats and the KKK, and how systematic racism actually is still very, very prevalent, but it is being committed by the Democratic Party. Before I go into the day's topic, dinner tonight, it's going to be a toss-up between tacos or ordering a pizza. There's a few errands I have to do after kid pickup here in just a couple hours, so that'll determine what direction we go for dinner. So if I get the running around done early, then we'll probably do tacos. If it takes a little bit longer, then I might just order a pizza and call it a day, because this weekend's going to be quite busy. And then, of course, a reminder, we're boycotting the Bad Bunny halftime show, so it is settled. I will be watching the alternative halftime show put on by TPUSA. So I hope that it's going to be a good show. I hope that it does display American family values. I hope to hear no foul language and no themes of, themes that are not going to be in the Big Bunny, whatever show. Bad Bunny, Big Bunny, whatever. So with that being said, a couple of updates. One, I am prepping the hive for a new swarm of honeybees. Great news is they're already scouting, and I haven't even put in any lemongrass, which I'm going to wait until the first week of March, just because that's going to be the prime time once we're done with cold snaps that are going to drop the temp below about 45. So once we're maintaining an ambient temperature of at least 50 to 55, which should be in about 2 to 3 weeks here in Florida. So I'm expecting to be able to have the coffee burps. I'm expecting to be able to get my hive fully going, and then producing honey all through the summer. I'm actually going to be readjusting the yard, so maybe this weekend as it warms up, I'm going to start clearing out some of the beds to replace some of the old foliage with nectar producing, pollen producers, very bee friendly, so that'll make their jobs easier. Because the science behind it is, if I can keep, my bees in a central location, aka my yard, that is shorter trips for them to be able to bring pollen into the hive. And then, of course, with a supplement like a brood booster, be able to ramp those numbers up all through March and April, and then by June, I'm expecting to have a colony of at least 15 to 20,000 honeybees, pushing to fill in about 20 frames of honey, which would equate to about 30 to 35 pounds. Oh, that was cool. Anyway, and then so by October, November is when I'll be harvesting the honey, and then I'm going to sell it under my own brand, the Lord's Best. So it'll be honey I'm going to sell, which is 100% natural, going from hive, and then through just natural gravity filter. So it's clean, and then I will bottle it, and then I'll sell it in small quantities for those who obviously would like to purchase it. But I'll keep you updated on the honeybee situation as it unfolds. Today's background music goes to Studio Avera. It is called Candlelit Colonial Ambience. So it's going to be fitting because of our topic today, again going over democratic racism and how the Democrats still today are subvertently, they are truly like racist. And we're going to go through this and why and how and why it is still a really big problem. Because I want you to take these things that I'm about to tell you, and I want you to think about them. So, assuming someone or a people group is hindered or otherwise incapable of doing the same thing as any other normal person can, making that determination based on race and not someone's ability, that is by definition racism. Now, going a little further, right? Saying Democrats, this is all about kind of their thinking, their actions, and what their history is, right? They say that blacks and Hispanics and any type of non-white race, right? They say that you're a disfranchised race. So the Democrats say, let us give you something separate from apparently fortunates, or having an inclination that there is somehow a people or a race, right, that is like better than another race, right? Which is, again, not biblical, and that isn't like the right thing to do. It's kind of, not kind of, it's wicked and evil, right? So again, saying that you're a disenfranchised race, let us give you something separate from fortunates. It's the same democratic plays, it is just different ways that they're doing it now. And the question, is who is giving these Democrats permission to call normal, able-bodied humans somehow insufficient or incapable, and calling them otherwise a lesser being, unable to possess a valid photo identification? That is insulting. That is insulting. That is literally telling, Americans, not blacks, not whites, not Mexico-American, not Asian American, not Russian American, German American, English American, whatever, right? If you're a United States citizen, doesn't matter what color you are, what is your ability? As a grown man or woman, you should have the ability to have a photo ID. That's not a race thing. That is not a disenfranchising thing. In fact, the Jim Crow type of situation is saying that, with the water fountain, oh, well, they're not good enough to drink out of the white water fountain, but let's give them a black-only water fountain. Let's make sure that we have lax voting laws to make sure that, that our poor whatever people, right, are able to cast a ballot easily. Well, again, you need a photo identification if you're in a vehicle driving it. Most people in America possess a vehicle, right? The biggest problem we're going to have with voter ID and a picture ID are people that are homeless. And this is going back to several videos ago when I said that the way the Republic democracy works, right? Imagine, back to the parable, the teacher has a class of 100 kids. Well, if out of 100 kids, only 50 are chipping in to buy the present for the teacher, well, only the 50 kids that are actually putting in money have really a say, right? If the other 50 kids are not putting in money, then they don't actually have a right to tell the contributors what present they should be getting the teacher. So this translates into, if you're an American citizen, then in one shape or another, right, you are paying taxes. At least that's the expectation. So in a good faith, American relationship, and a government to citizen relationship, right, that is the assumed position that you're an American citizen, you're paying taxes, and be that as it may, right? You're required to have a photo identification if you go to the airport, if you go into concerts, or if you go virtually anywhere. It's funny, they were just showing a video yesterday, a clip that when Barack Hussein Obama was casting his vote, right, they asked for identification. So again, this is maddening, because when I look in the eyes of people like Chuck Schumer, I literally see a reincarnated plantation owner who is consistently spinning narratives to protect his modern day slaves, which are really illegal aliens. I'm gonna get there. So again, people of any ethnicity, people of any race, right, you are an American first. And that means that as an investor in the greatest, freest nation in the planet, you hold a chip. right? You have a chip in a chair, as we used to say in the old poker days. And that means that your voice should be heard, and your opinions on matters that matter to America should be counted, right? That vote should be counted. Now, if the Democrats are making a ton of money by getting big Fed dollars because they have sanctuary cities that are housing illegal aliens and using up all of the free benefits, right? That's very much the same as an indentured servant that the Southern Democrats, known as Dixiecrats, used to do. So again, wanting to keep illegal aliens is the real disenfranchisement. They want people to be sufferers in a foreign nation while soliciting to obtain their vote, attracting them to do the worst jobs for the lowest pay, just for cheap votes and even cheaper labor. The Democrats disgust me because the level of abuse to so many people they do subvertently. It is a crime in my eyes. Now, in the movie Flowers in the Attic, the evil grandmother is slowly poisoning her grandchildren as they stay prisoner in the attic. Well, illegals are likened to modern-day slavery in America because it was Southern Democrats who backed the KKK. But Southern Democrats loved their slave labor, just didn't want them to be free. The KKK owned slaves and hunted them down when they escaped the plantation, right? So kind of paint that picture, right? So even if an illegal is waking up and smelling the coffee and saying, gosh, like, I really shouldn't be here. Like, this ain't my country, this ain't my money, I have actually contributed nothing to this society, but yet I'm coming in to reap the benefits of it under whatever guise or excuse, right? Well, again, who is feeding this information to illegals? Who is training them? Democrats, right? Because Democrats back in the day, the Dixiecrats, they made sure that their slaves had enough basic needs or necessities covered to stay alive and productive, but never given the respect of true equality. Never ever have Democrats, from the bottom of their heart, looked at anything without racial biasism, unfortunately. And they are the very ones that are trying to pin this bullshit on Republicans. I think that's it's an insanity. You know, a classic argument by Democrats is, would any white man or woman go pick fruits for minimum wage? Right? You've heard this before. And especially in California, they're saying, well, we need the illegals because without their free or cheap labor, we couldn't afford to grow our crops. That's the same song and dance Democrats were saying back in the 1800s. And again, you know, better yet, the Democrats like Schumer or whoever are trying to say, well, illegals don't vote. Well, then you're even more of a cruel master, saying that your slaves don't even want a voice in society. No, they be so happy so long as they get them benefits. That really is a mistreatment of people. You are literally looking at a race of people as lesser than another. You're saying that only illegal Mexicans who don't even want to vote, who are here illegally, right, that we can essentially abuse them and put them in the cheapest labor jobs to make sure that white Democratic business owner, right, rich liberals get to keep the labor, but yet they're going to feel all nice and Gucci, right? Because in their own mind, right, they're the heroes of these people. And in fact, they're the very ones that are actually condemning them. Because every culture has a home base. And that's where they speak the same tongue, share local customs, dress according to native heritage, keep legacy and traditions. And democratic slave owners want them for labor. They want them for votes. And they want them for sad case points. So imagine that, unfortunately, in the beginning of the slave trade to America, it was tribal chiefs that would conquer another tribe, and then a part of their plan was they sold other other Africans to white European settlers exclusively to be sold in Southern America. And who was purchasing these people? But Southern Democrats. And what was the Southern Democratic argument that led up to the Civil War was that in their soapboxing back in the 1800s, pre-Civil War, was that if they do not have a workforce made up of slave labor, that the entire farming communities in America would have collapsed. That textiles would have been so expensive that nobody could even afford clothes. That if they didn't have their slave labor, that the good Americans, the white America, would actually starve. So they considered their slaves, yes, to be a part of society, but only as long as they were smiling, they were grateful to be working on such a nice plantation, they were given at least lukewarm soup, and the bread didn't have too many boll weevils or mold on it. This is how Dixiecrats think or thought. And again, and even back then, right? If you were to try to correct their behavior or to try to call them out on it, well, gosh, what would happen? Well, it led to a literal civil war because they weren't getting the picture that America is a free nation for all, not a free nation for the few. And I, as God, do not want my beautiful lands to be abandoned due to crime, poverty, or destitution. These nations, like Mexico, like Venezuela, like Argentina, like Brazil, what have you, right? These nations, they need help getting their houses in order so they can be a proud people with a bright future. They all have a home base. That's the allotted land I, as Elohim, have provisioned every culture and people. And as I am familiar with slavery because the Israelites were enslaved to Egyptian pharaohs, right? Because a currency in ancient times and in modern times was having a large people group that didn't actually have true equality in the eyes of the government, right? And it is a tragedy that these illegals are here because they are currently living as real fugitives. And they are just the Democrats' newest victims. They're the Democrats' newest slaves. And then the Democrats play the game that they hurt them only to then rescue them. Right? That's a mind game. That's a psychological bad thing to do. Right? It's kind of playing this game where a Democrat would buy, these slaves, he'd take them to their plantation, and he would want a constant pat on the back showing these slaves like, hey, look at these outhouses for you. Look, it's only going to be 25 of you, and you guys get your own bathroom. I kid you not. As Elohim, I've seen it. They literally would sit there and try to praise themselves that 25 slaves that had not even a solid floor, it was a dirt floor, and housing on large plantations in the South. And then when they would get new slaves, they would take them on tour to plantation. And they would tell these new slaves how grateful they should be that they're in their care. And that they get 2 square meals a day. And that there's only 25, end quote, there's only 25 Negroes per one outhouse. And that they will themselves, you know what I mean? I'm saying, how twisted, truly, could people be? And then in their hearts of hearts, right, they truly did feel that they were doing, like, these slaves, they were their savior. These Southern Democrats really believed that without their intervention, these slaves would have just been killing over and dying without the Southern Democrats' intervention. It's insane. My work with the world is only at about 1% or so, but if people stopped allowing sin to lead and Democrats owning illegals as modern-day slavery, I might just get around to other heritage lands and be able to restore them back to being proud of who they are and where they live. But So long as Democrats continue to prey upon the ignorant youth and the needy, to which none but their own riches and their own liberal, friends succeed at any level. Not one person, not one citizen has truly been at the benefit of any democratic policies. This is a larger problem than party politics. This is a problem of demonstrable evil. It is insidious that it is still in America, and again, the source of these things, as Elohim, that is my job, to find the source. It is resting within this literal, wicked way of thinking. So, if you do walk a biblical, truthful life and purpose in the creation, then these situations are not only clear, but they are evident to you. Or should be. Here's a brief joke. Why do Democrats try so hard to erase history? Because they look so despicable in it. That's the truth. We should be letting people all over the world be able to live and to thrive in their home country. And if they want to legally immigrate to America, then great. They're going to have citizenship, rights, opportunities, and not one issue from ICE. But as a citizen is, so a citizen does. The same laws apply to each human equally. Nothing, not even religion, not race, not gender, or financial status will ever change or alter the citizenship rules. That's great news. That means that what applies to the white man applies to the black man, applies to the Asian man. Period. That's a good thing. That's called equality. That means the game's not rigged anyway. Not rigged for or against any people. Because America is made up of a free and an equal people who are all vested in this great nation under me, the sovereign God of the Bible. America has a native tongue of English, and its religious heritage is Judeanity, a mix between Judaism and Christianity. A historical truth of one God who created the heavens and the earth, and that same God who comes down and dwells among humankind. From Genesis until now, I am that God. And that is this nation's national religion, heritage, and destiny. So again, if you are an American citizen, these values will resonate deeply and honestly within you. America is a land of great liberty because it is a land of righteous laws. Okay, so that's jumping into the next topic. But it is so infuriating to hear people like Chuck Schumer railing about they're shooting down the SAVE Act because it's going to disenfranchise the homeless. It's going to disenfranchise the mentally ill. Essentially, you're saying that you're relying on the most oppressed, needy people in America to be able to, that's your army? It's interesting because if you ever watch the movie 300, and Leonidas and his 300 are protecting the gates, right? I'm not sure, but the gates of hell type of thing, or whatever they call it, this small little area. Well, when the camera pans, I know it's all CG, but in the movie, right? And then this big fat general's coming, and then he's in front of him, and he's like, the bad guys, this is actually the Persian Empire under Xerxes. He's coming face to face with Leonidas, and he's like, or maybe it was one of Leonidas's generals, but anyway, he goes, you think you're a match for us? We're the largest army on the planet. We're gonna consume you. Our arrows will blot out the sun. And in the classic, right, the guy responds then we'll fight in the shade. But before that, he goes, I see many slaves, but no warriors, or few warriors, right? I see many votes, but few citizens. I see an illegal people who are being checkmated by Democrats with their free shit, and yet thinking it's okay for a human being to be illegally in a country where again, they're not treated equal, they're not treated fair because of their citizenship status. And unfortunately, the Democrats are supporting criminal behavior. The Democrats cheated back then, they cheated today. They are literally just a backwards-minded type of people who truly, through their own heritage, their own previous blueprints, like their genetic lineages, like they really are ingrained with this superiority complex that they need to be. They are the oppressor and the savior. This is what the Southern Democrats did in the slave days. Is, again, they would go to these slave houses, and, you know, of course, they just came back from a 4 to 6 month trip on a boat. So a lot of them didn't look great. They were weakened. You know, they didn't know how to speak English. And so the Democrat is looking at them like they're just another mule, right? They're looking at their teeth and they're like, oh, well, this poor creature, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be a good Democrat. I'll go ahead and take 5 of these poor babies, right? He'd put them in the back of his wagon. He'd travel all the way home. And that's what I mean. And then he'd let them out and be like, here, what a great plantation you get to work on. What a great outhouse you can share with 25 people. And you know what's even better is when we have heavy snows, I'm such a generous plantation owner that I'm going to allocate like 7 logs per cabin so you all have warmth and you don't freeze to death. And you know what would happen is if they didn't get the response that they desired, just like they do today, like they would begin like terrorizing them until, to their point, until you see the light, until you see how I'm here to help you, until you are praising me for that one outhouse shared between 25 of you, until you are thanking me for your non-moldy bread at the end of a hard day. Like, and again, they can't see the problem with these things. Like, truly, even today, right now, if a Democrat watched my video, they would probably walk away going, I don't get it. I don't understand the problem. Because they don't. They are literally completely out of tune with, obviously, me, God, but 2, my Bible, and 3, just general common sense about how to be human to other human beings. Like, it's quite simple. If you closed your eyes, right, and you were being read out a list of a person's behavior traits and their accomplishments, and like, let's say, right, I'm going to use the fence. Let's say I closed my eyes and I had Archangel Michael. I said, okay, pull me 2 of the best profiles for a fence builder. I don't care about their name and I don't care about their race, their gender. I don't care. I want to know what they're capable of. What's their experience? What's their behaviors? What's their track record? Archangel Michael reads it out and he's like, Majesty, on column 1, this person has 25 years of fence building. He's been a carpenter, or they've been a carpenter for 15 of those years. Track record of doing 30 of these similar projects. I'm like, okay, Michael, what's the other candidate? This person may only have 5 years, and before this was working, in an industrial complex. Okay, so Archangel Michael, let's take the one who has the most experience working on the type of project we're going to have. And guess what? Archangel Michael would call the person, and then the person would show up. To my surprise, is no surprise. I don't really care if they're brown, if they're white, if they're black. I mean, if they're green. I mean, I'm saying I don't care. I care about the ability for that person to do a job. That's why America's so great. Because we literally don't disenfranchise people for any purpose. We shouldn't be. Democrats shouldn't be. The problem again is, if Democrats were trying to actually put together common sense legislation, and if they truly did stop with lies, and they stopped with the antics, they stopped with this political bull rushing they do, and then they're trying to stir up anger and division, right? They paint ICE agents as somehow the Gestapo, right? Truly, I am hanging penances, 100-pound stones upon every Democrat slave owner who, instead of owning African Americans in today's time, they're owning illegal aliens. That's a fact. So, that's a penance that you will never get rid of until you cease the behavior, repent for the behavior, and then ask in an intercession for your shame to be removed. But first, Democrats would have to have shame, something I don't think you possess. And if that's the case, then you actually have no future in your afterlife. I don't want people like that with those kind of mental, like, nastiness to ever be close in the heavenly abode. Let me tell you something. There are angels of every type of human cultural designation. That's a fact. That's a promise. That's a swear. That again, in the reality, like the Super Bowl, right? They're going to have the Puppy Bowl. And the Puppy Bowl, there's like 50 or however many there are, right? Every one of these puppies are absolutely adorable. And the Doberman, you know, the Doberman, the Rottweiler, the Yorkie, the whatever, right? The Blue Hound, saying they're all dogs. They're cute. And then guess what? They all do dog things. Human beings are human beings, and they all do human being things. Which is also the point of why the citizenship matters, right? To the left, we need to let everybody in. We do. No. Because human beings also deserve to live in their native country in peace, without disparity, without poverty, and without being taken advantage of by cartels who, as I've said, are in the midst of owning modern-day slaves, who are cutting drugs, selling drugs, packaging drugs, making drug mules out of human beings. These are all real crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, the Democrats are so pissed off because the current administration is taking away their slaves, and look what happens when you take away democratic slaves. They begin to not only resist, they begin to freak out. The Democrats are freaking out because I, as Elohim, I am going to disintegrate it. It has, just like I disintegrated these barbarian tribes that used to inhabit the Americas, I had to eliminate that because of the behavior. The behavior. That's, again, the point. Those individuals, I don't care if you're the highest Democrat in the office or if you're the lowest. I don't care. People that are aligning with these seditious ideals, I'm going to remove you. I'm going to remove you from the creation. That's fact. I'll take a 5, regroup, and then I'll cover my next point, but taking a 5. And we're back. So we are getting kind of short on time, but I just wanted to re-edify the fact that not much has changed in 250 years with the Democratic Party. They've essentially just changed their entire schemes. But here is a good article by Dr. Sean. It says the racist roots and current facets of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party's history with racism is not merely a footnote. It is a stark, defining chapter that has shaped its policies, actions, and voter base over the centuries. From its inception, through the Civil War era, and into the modern age, the Democratic Party has demonstrated a constant pattern of racist policies and attitudes, often paraded under the guise of progressivism or social justice. The historical racist foundations. The party's origins in the 19th century are deeply entangled with the defense of slavery, Southern Democrats, known as Dixiecrats, were the architects of the secession and the Confederacy, explicitly fighting to maintain slavery. After the Civil War, their racist policies continued through the implementation of Jim Crow laws, which were enacted by Democratic legislators and signed into law by Democratic governors across the South. These laws institutionalized segregation, disenfranchisement, and discrimination against African Americans. The Democratic Party's opposition to civil rights was further evidenced by its resistance to the Reconstruction Amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to be exact, intended to abolish slavery, grant citizenship, and protect voting rights for African Americans. The party's filibuster of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, led by prominent Democrats, was one of the longest in U.S. Senate history, showcasing their resistance to racial equality. Modern manifestations. In contemporary times, while the party's public rhetoric has shifted, underlying actions often betray a continuity with its racist past. The Democratic Party has been using race as a political tool, stoking racial resentment to build coalition support and energize non-white voters. This strategy is often couched in social justice rhetoric that frames America as inherently, structurally racist, thereby promoting division rather than unity. One clear modern example is the party's approach to criminal justice. Historical policies like the 1994 crime bill, authored by then Senator Joe Biden, disproportionately impacted African American communities, leading to mass incarceration. Despite recent acknowledgments and even apologies for these policies, the consequences linger, and the Democratic Party has been slow to undo systematic effects of slavery. Furthermore, the push for identity politics within the party has resulted in policies and practices that prioritize race over individual merit or need, such as in hiring practices, educational admissions, and the allocation of resources. This is a modern form of racial discrimination, albeit under the banner of equality. Cultural and institutional racism. The Democratic Party's embrace of cultural narratives like critical race theory, or CRT, in educational settings has been criticized for promoting a view that all societal structures are inherently racist. No, just Democrats. Promoting racial division rather than reconciliation. The enforcement of diversity, equality, and inclusion, or DEI, policies in various sectors has also come under scrutiny for favoring racial quotas over individual capability, therefore perpetuating a different kind of racial prejudice. We see this now in the current Nike situation. Moreover, the party's handling of internal dissent or criticism on racial matters often labels detractors with accusations of racism or bigotry, which stifles open debate and reinforce a narrative of racial division rather than promoting genuine equality. The Democratic Party's history with racism is not just a relic of the past, but a living legacy that influences current policies and cultural attitudes within the party. The implications of its historical actions combined with current practices as a complex relationship with racial issues that prioritize political gain over true racial reconciliation and equality. The party's evolution from overt racism to a more nuanced form of racial division under the guise of progressivism warrants a critical examination, especially by those who seek genuine equality and a just American society. I do feel that that was a well-written article, and again, I will actually put this in the description of today's video if anybody wants to go in and read it for yourself. But that's the truth. That is the truth, because there is absolutely no difference between an able-bodied white man, an able-bodied black man, or an able-bodied anybody, right? Just like I've been saying, a man is a man, right? Now, if you're gender confused, right, then that's a whole different topic. But again, these have all stemmed from Democrats. Like, it's wicked and evil is what I'm trying to say here. It is blatantly wicked and evil. And they are the taskmasters, right? They are the slave owners of illegal aliens, of people that are so bad off in these sanctuary hellholes that if they're like, you know what I mean, they're trying to convince historically democratic voters why the outhouse that they just gave 25 slaves should be applauded, instead of being looked at in an appalling fashion. So that's, you know, it's truly wicked and evil, and I hate it, because people like Chuck Schumer should have never been in politics, right? People like Pelosi, people like Waltz, and that's what I mean. And then they get their Mamdanis, right? These people are just they're greenhorn wannabe politicians, and then they stuff them in there, just like if you've ever seen the comedy with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. I think the movie's called Life. It's a comedy about basically like a southern plantation / prison. Well, imagine, right, who's the right hand? So you have like the white guard and the plantation owner, right? His daughter's a hussy. Well, in the summary here, they promote like this black slave guy to be the straw boss, right? So they give him a position and a title, so then he can run workshop over the people. So then the people don't feel like it's actually coming from the actual string pullers, right? Who are the Democratic leaders. That's what they do when they put in place like Ilhan Omar's and then Mamdani's. And at the end of the day, the motivating factor for Democrats is they want that free labor. They want essentially an unlimited amount of votes, as long as they have people that are under the shoe of Democrats, or they're at the mercy of the benefits that Democrats dispense to sanctuary cities. I don't feel that it's right to allow people into our country illegally to not only suck up American benefits, but then these people are hiding. They're fugitives on the run because the Democrats need cheap labor to pick strawberries, and they need to make sure they get a vote. Or again, worse, then they're trying to say, well, they don't vote. So then we're just literally even worse. Right now, we're taking away the voice of a human being who, if they went back to Mexico, they would have a voice. They would actually be able to make a change in their own country that is desperately needing it. America doesn't need free labor. America doesn't need voters that don't have ID, right? If anything, if I have an American citizen who's homeless or who doesn't have access to getting IDs, I need to know that they're at least an American citizen so I can give them access to a hand up. Excuse me. And that's the truth. So, all right, I'm going to regroup, make sure I don't have any further thoughts, and then we will come to conclusion, and then I will bid you farewell for the weekend. All right, we're back. So, a couple of quick notes. An answer to the Christian Post is, the question was, is somebody damned if they don't have a baptism? No. A Christian is not damned if they haven't been baptized. Baptizing is an action that is showed to the church publicly, the church society. It says, hey, I have been washed and my sin forgiven, right? I'm on the side of righteousness, and I'm now joining like my fellow Christians in a walk with me, Elohim. And again, that is when a society is looked at from the 30,000 foot view, from me at home. I want to look down on my churches and say, those people are doing righteousness. Those are the pillars of humanity. That is how civilization is going to be ensured its longevity. And I do believe that, religious leaders should have a voice in politics, right? And again, America is a Christian Judaism, right? Judeanity. It is the full Bible. It is Old, New, and Third Testament. And that's the foundation of that. And then I strongly denounce any acts of violence, damage to property, or harassment towards any religious institutions, period. The California Catholic Church vandals should be found and persecuted accordingly. If there is a church on this creation, as you humans call it, in God's green earth, it is. If there is a problem that I as Elohim have with a church, I will take action against it through divine providence, not through the hands of humans who truly are damaging, vandalizing out of ignorant hatred towards any people group. Because, again, like, human action and behavior is what defines you. Not your race, not your religion, not your geographical location, not your financial well-being, but it is the character you have. There are rich people with terrible character and bad behaviors. Look at Jeffrey Epstein, right? A dreg, scum of the earth, sitting in hell. And yet you have poor people all around the world who are good human beings. They may not have barely a pot to piss in themselves, but they're still willing to lend a hand. They're friendly, they're helpful, they try to have positive outlooks on life, they have some connection to me, Elohim. So again, division, like all these other nonsense, these are all, again, democratic things. But my last note is, Mamdani, socialism in America, it leads to criminal triumph. And those nations that have criminal champions are being taken out day by day by American forces. So my question is, why are you mayor? And why are you in America? Because you're not serving the best interests of the American people. You are just like the Dixiecrat slave owners. And you're trying to dictate to masses of people, telling them how the hand of the master is going to feed them as long as they obey. I think you're faulty, I think you're wrong, and I don't think you're much of a politician. So, with that being said, I hope everybody has a good weekend. And, check out the Super Bowl. I'm not sure what team I'm supposed to be going for. I really don't care, but I sure like sports. So, we'll see. But I will not be watching Bad Bunny, that's for damn sure. So, alright everybody, have a good rest of your weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.